never surprised at how Spirit works. You know, I write the topics of the Sunday messages about 6 months in advance. I just go through the calendar and I kind of look at with, oh, it's around Thanksgiving, we'll do this. So, you know, like next week, the Sunday before Thanksgiving, the topic is choosing our family ties. Thought people might want to hear that before Thanksgiving. But anyway, so I have so I kind of, you know, look, and so for some reason back in, I don't know, January or February, before we even opened, I put today as the value of rest. And then I scheduled my honeymoon to come back last night. And so I get to talk to you about the value of rest, and I get to really, really, really know what I'm talking about, because we had a fabulous time. So we were gone 8 days in Cabo San Lucas, and we really got rested. I want to start by showing you some pictures here in a moment, and I also want to thank, back up. I want to thank my lovely AV assistant. We kind of at the last minute didn't have someone show up, and so my fabulous, wonderful husband is back there running AV, and so, you know, the minister's husband, they get to do everything, and as my daughter pointed out, the guy who's deaf in one ear is running AV, so be a little forgiving today, but anyway, so we were on our honeymoon. I hate heights, just so you know. Hate heights. Can't stand them. I don't even like, you know, being 2 stories up and looking out the window, right? So we're sitting there the first day at our resort looking out, and my husband goes, gosh, you know, he's good friends with a man named Arun Gandhi, Gandhi's grandson, and he says, I thought it was so neat that Arun got his wife Sananda to go parasailing with him. That was a wonderful thing. That was like such an act of love. I'm thinking, where's this going? And we're sitting there in the infinity pool looking out over the Sea of Cortez and all the boats dragging people in parachutes behind them. And he says, what would you think about going parasailing? And my first response was, no. Well, needless to say, it was our honeymoon and I love him. So now the first shot. So here we are on the deck of the boat, just being lifted off. I don't know if you can see, but that little, like, you know, 8-inch wide strap is the only thing holding you up there, the one under my butt. That is it. My butt does not fit in an 8-inch wide strap, but clearly it did. Next shot, please. We got gently lifted off the boat. There we are. Up and away. Next slide, please. So there we are, sailing over the Sea of Cortez. I actually look okay. As one friend put it on Facebook, and he saw it, he says, nothing says I'm having the time of my life like a 5,000 PSI jet trip. But I know you can see how white my knuckles are there, but we're going up. Next slide, please. That's us at the top. Now, I have to tell you, that rock is called Land's End. If you've ever been there to Cabo, you know that. That is the end of the Baja Peninsula. That is where behind the rock is the Sea of Cortez, and in front of us is the Pacific Ocean. So it got quite windy because the 2 oceans are meeting, and if you're in a boat, the current gets quite interesting right there. But yeah, that's us. We are 450 feet in the air. That's on top of a 45-story building, just to give you a sense of that. Yeah, so next slide, please. There, the photographer was being cute, put us up there on top. Next slide, please. And then they brought us down. The photographer was motioning us to kiss while we were there in the art so she could get a picture. I turned to him, I'm like, just give me your hand. There's no way I'm going to go there. I'll hold your hand. So, and there we are coming back onto the boat. So that was our big. I wanted to show you those because as I talk about the value of rest, I'm going to refer back to that. It was really insightful to do that. Terrifying. I can't say I relaxed the entire time we were up there. I can't say that at any point I went, oh, this is beautiful. I went, okay, yeah, it's pretty. Okay, we're up here 10 minutes. I think it's been 9 yet. But then when we got back down, I was really glad I did. I was very glad. And he owes me for a very, very long time. That's right. Value. Careful, Cindy.
quotes. Just kidding.
No, you weren't.
So the value of rest. The value of rest. It is crucial. Rest is not something we do well in our culture. We don't do rest well. This comes from something called the Protestant work ethic. The Protestant work ethic. Well, I want you guys to recall what Joanne read. She read those beautiful readings from both the Old and the New Testament that talk about how important rest is. And if you really carefully read the New Testament, every time Jesus performs a miracle, the next line is, and then Jesus went apart for a while. Basically, Jesus does his work, and then he rests. He understands the balance of rest. This master teacher is trying to model for us that you do that thing that God inspires you to do, and then you go apart for a while. You rest. But somewhere along the way, in the mid-17th century, the Protestants, particularly the Presbyterians, they came up with a doctrine that talked about being one of the elect. And if you are one of the elect, you are definitely going to heaven. And there's nothing you can do to be one of the elect because you are elected before you're even born to go to heaven. This is part of the doctrine that was prevalent in that era. However, we being humans, people wanted to see clues if they were elect. So they believed that if they had more wealth, or more happiness, or more success in their lives, it was a clue that they were part of the elect. And so this, of course, you can see how out of over 100 years or so, this can spiral out of control to where we work harder to prove that we are one of the elect, so that we know for sure that we are going to heaven. This became known as the Protestant work ethic. We work harder to make sure we have the success to make sure we're going to get into heaven. This is not in the Bible. This is 1,500, 1,600 years after Jesus. And yet we have enveloped it as part of our Judeo-Christian heritage. And it's just really kind of a mythic thing that has come up that has no grounding in the actual spiritual teachings. All the spiritual teachings talk about the value of rest. We are better when we rest. Let's add to that then the American part of the Protestant work ethic. This country was founded by a bunch of second sons of nobility. These second sons, you know, who inherits, right? First sons. First sons inherit the estate back in England. What are the second sons going to do? Feed off their brother for the rest of their lives? No. They had the opportunity to come here in those early voyages, not up to Plymouth Colony in Massachusetts, but to the Jamestown Colony in Virginia. That was a huge capitalist enterprise founded by the Virginia Company. And so there were stockholders, people came basically looking for riches. And these second sons of nobility didn't know how to work. So they arrived, and they're like, okay, where's the gold? I don't see any gold sitting on the ground, so I guess I'm just going to sit here and starve until somebody feeds me. And it was the leader of that colony, a man named John Smith, who had been in prison, who had had a very hard life. John Smith said, if you don't work, you don't eat. And he had to lay down the law so that this colony would function, where only the people who worked hard could partake in the riches of the colony. Well, this gets, of course, indoctrinated into our own psyche. If you work hard, you partake in the riches. Don't we feel that way today? If we work hard, we get more, right? How many of you found that to be really, really true consistently over your lives? The harder you work, the more you get. Consistently over your lives, not periodically, but consistently. Has anybody found that to be the truth? My husband's the only one back there raising his hand. I'm taking you back to Cabo. I'm sorry. That's all there is to that. The reality is that there is a balance that needs to be found. There are periods where hard work is appropriate, but as Jesus modeled for us in the Bible, it needs to be followed by periods of rest. So the thing about rest is that it does three main things for us. Rest strengthens our bodies. Rest strengthens our bodies. So those of you who are really into working out, and you hear about no pain, no gain, and you got to work out at least 45 minutes a day every day if you want to stay in optimum Yes, you need to exercise. Yes, you need to eat well. But our bodies function better at rest. Now, if we never exercise, that's not good either. It's the balance. But the pendulum swings so far the other way that there are people who work out all day, every day, and never rest. I have an older half-sister who, she used to have stress fractures all the time, but would never quit jogging because it was so good for her body to keep jogging on the stress fracture. She couldn't see the fallacy of that. When in bodybuilding, if any of you are bodybuilders, you know that it is when you stop lifting the weights that you build muscle. It's not the weight lifting that builds the muscle. When you lift the weights, you actually break down the muscle. You tear the muscle and break it down. And it's when you give it a day off that it regenerates more. So it's during rest that the muscle cells actually increase, and that's how you get the bulk. It's not during the lifting periods, it's during the resting periods. Also, your immune system creates 10 times more white blood cells when you are sleeping than when you are awake. So when you rest, your body is rejuvenating itself and your immune system is bulking up, so to speak, when you rest. How many of you get 8 hours of sleep every night, no matter what? Good for all of you. What, 7? Good for all 7. How many of you get more like 5 or 6? How many of you say, but that's really optimum for me, because if I get 8 hours of sleep, I'm not good, I'm groggy, or I really do better on 6 or 7 hours. What you've done is you've trained yourself to be addicted to adrenaline. You've trained yourself to be addicted to adrenaline, and it becomes an addiction. And then your body creates something called cortisol when you don't get enough sleep. And the cortisol creates belly fat, among other things, ladies. There was a great quote I found online by a bodybuilder, and he said that cortisol is the enemy because it smoothifies. That's the word he used. It smoothifies your body. It reduces your muscle definition. So even if you were a weightlifter and you were trying to bodybuild, if you don't get 8 hours of sleep, the cortisol will come in and undermine what you've done in the weightlifting. So that's the very concrete value of rest. Our bodies need rest. They need rest to work optimally. And rest is one of those things that we have to make time for. No one's going to say, you look tired, why don't you go take a nap? They're going to go, what do you mean you didn't get that finished? It's only 10:30, you could get it done by 11. We have to do that ourselves. We have to make it a priority. Rest also shifts our consciousness. When we rest, we go into a different state of consciousness. Our minds change. Have you guys ever noticed this? I'm sure you've all had the experience of being busy and twirled up about something and really in the midst of something. And the more you do that, again, it's an addictive pattern. You think you have to finish. I am terrible about this, and I noticed it last night when I was unpacking. I'm unpacking. I know we got home about 6 o'clock last night. So knowing I'm coming here today, I'm like, I want to get unpacked. I got to get lunch started. I got to go to the mail. I got to get the bills going. I got to clean up the top for tomorrow. I got to get And Steve's like, let's sit down and show our daughter our parasailing pictures. And I'm like, nope. But we did. We sat down, we showed her, and then suddenly, none of this seemed that overwhelming. I got to print out a couple things and start a little laundry. No big deal. 15 minutes earlier, it had been this huge list of things to do. When we rest, it shifts our consciousness. There's an interesting, I think I've told this story, I know I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it fits here. There was an experiment done in the 1970s about states of consciousness. In the 1970s, there were researchers who were investigating the effects of the drug phenobarbital. So they used lab rats. So they took the rats and they taught them how to run a maze. And the rats ran the maze. And then they injected the rats with phenobarbital and tried to get the rats to run the maze, and they couldn't run the maze. So what the researchers came up with, quite reasonably, is that phenobarbital inhibits our ability to reason. right? So, you can't learn on phenobarbital, or you can't remember on phenobarbital. And even though it's been prescribed for seizure medication for decades now, that's always been the warning. It inhibits your learning ability. In the early 2000s, some researchers got to looking at this, and they began to question the results. So they did something pretty revolutionary. They took rats, and they injected them with phenobarbital and taught them how to run the maze. And they learned. And then they took them off the phenobarbital, and the rats couldn't remember how to run the maze. It wasn't the phenobarbital, it was the state of consciousness. When you are in a certain state of consciousness, you do not have access to information that you have in a different state of consciousness. How many of you have experienced being angry at a partner or spouse, and you totally forget that you love this person? You're laughing, but seriously, we do not have access to information in our angry state of consciousness that is part of who we are in our resting state of consciousness. It is gone to us. We do not have it. You can sit there all you want and try and say, I think I love this person. I think I'm supposed to love this person. I know I love this person. And you won't be able to have access to that feeling until you take the time to shift your state of consciousness out of anger and back to wherever you find that you love this person. I never had that problem. I am just back in my honeymoon, So rest is how you shift your consciousness. You break whatever pattern you were in your consciousness that makes all the information that you know and all the information in the universe available to you, but you are blind to it when you are under stress, when you are angry, when you are overwhelmed, when you are overtired. You are blind to it. And when you rest, your consciousness shifts. I remember I've heard around this movement all the time people say, oh, well, we have access to all the information we want. Or if someone goes in to take a test, and say, oh, you know all the answers, there's only one mind. All that's true. How do you access them? You have to be in the proper state of consciousness. You can't do that when you're afraid or worried. Rest. So rest shifts our consciousness. And then the last thing that rest does is it solidifies our trust in God. You have to trust God to be able to rest. Because if you don't, you think you got to do something. There's a great phrase that I was reminded of in class a minute ago. I'm going to use it. It's a paraphrase of something Ellen Curtis Hopkins says. And it's taken me 5 years to wrap my head around. I still don't always wrap my head around it, but I want you to really hear this. To the extent you believe in evil, it's the extent you think there's something you must do. To the extent you believe in evil is the extent you believe there's something we must do. See, evil is just separation from spirit. Evil doesn't exist because we are never separate from spirit. We might be in a state of consciousness where we believe we're separate from spirit, but we are never separate from spirit, so we are never separate from our good. And when we know that we are never separate from our good, when we are in that consciousness of absolute unification, when we are absolutely certain that our good is here in every moment and it is being revealed as we need it right now, then we don't have to do anything. It's when we're afraid that our good isn't coming, when we're afraid that maybe it's not true, when we're afraid that maybe we can't have what we want or we don't deserve it, or maybe it's for everybody else but not for me. That's when we get busy. That's when we go, okay, well, I better work harder then. I really need this money, and so I don't trust that, I'm just going to be able to manifest money. So I'm going to go out and get a job, maybe a second job, maybe a third job, or I'm going to really work hard at this, or I'm going to move with that. So we don't trust God when we don't rest. But when we rest, we get to stop and say, this is good for me. I'm taking care of myself. I'm taking care of my consciousness. I'm taking care of my heart. I'm going to trust that while I am resting, the divine organizing power of the universe that created the galaxy is going to move the cosmic cogs so that everything I need falls into place and that I can be the grateful recipient of it without my puny little consciousness feeling like I have to go in there and micromanage God. So when we rest, we reiterate our trust in God. And when we don't, we undermine our trust in God. Every time we do a prayer and say, I trust that this is already done, I have everything I need, and it's truly the God within that does the work. I used to do this when I worked at CSL. So I'm guilty of this. We would have a team meeting, let's say, for publishing. We'd have a team meeting, and we'd all meet, and I'd say, okay, we're going to have a great week. Remember, everybody, just relax. It's not us, but it's God within that does the work. It's not us, but God within that does the work. We finish the prayer, and God within that does the work, and so it is. Everybody leave my house and be like, okay, I got to get busy. Well, is it me or is it God within that does the work? Really? Apparently I forgot that it was God within. Now that doesn't mean that we don't do anything. It's back to that balance. We take inspired action. When we are inspired to do something, we do it. When it feels like passion, and when it feels like fun, and when it feels like excitement, and when it feels like joy, that's the action we take. That's what we do. And then when we complete that action, we rest. And we let God take it from there. So, we remember the value of rest is in the balance between inspired action and letting go, letting it be. It strengthens our bodies, it shifts our consciousness, and it solidifies our trust in God. Let's pray. I'm rested. So here's what I know. I know that there is only one life, one power, one presence. I know that God is all there is. God is everywhere present. I know that that power and that life that lives through each of us, it is experiencing life as us. We are here on this planet to express and experience the Divine One. And more importantly, we are here on this planet to live in the state of consciousness where we are constantly aware of something greater than we are moving through us, calling us, inspiring us, and uplifting us. Because God is always present, always present. And as we recognize that all presence of God, we move above the swirl. We move above the day-to-day conditions of our life. We shift our consciousness to a place where we know that all is well. We trust that God is always moving through us. And we allow the infinite organizing power of the universe to take over. We rest in the knowledge that all is well. That we have everything we need in every moment. That we are cared for and guided and guarded and loved and safe. And as we rest in the knowledge of that, as we move our consciousness to recognize the presence of those things around us, to give thanks for the presence of those things around us, we get out of the busyness, we get out of the doingness, we get out of the fear, and we embrace the certainty. Our good is at hand. So I know for each person here today that we leave this place with a new understanding, a deeper sense of peace, a deeper connection with that one life that is the truth of who we are, a deeper knowing that there is no evil, for there is no separation, and that there is nothing for us to do There's just a new way to be. So we go out into the world and we be the peace we want to see. We be the rest that we crave so much. We be the presence of heaven on earth. And as we be it and model it and show it, we inspire those around us to do the same. And so it is with a grateful, grateful heart that I just accept all of the good that is always present. I accept it on behalf of each person here. I know that we are all blessed and that we see evidence of it every day as we go into this week. We look for the good and we praise it. And as we do so, we recognize it even more. And so from this place of gratitude, I just say that all is well. Todos está bien. I know we are blessed. I let it be so. I allow it to be so. I rest in the knowledge that it is so. There's nothing for us to do. It's just the way it is. And let's anchor that by saying, and so it is.